All right, welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right into it today. We are going to strip away all the fluff and chronologically summarize the epic journey and all the complex data found in the Book of Numbers. If you're looking for a direct, structured look at literally one of the most intense wilderness migrations in ancient history, you are in exactly the right place. Here is our roadmap for the journey today. We'll start with the census at Sinai, move on to the spies and the curse, cover the rebellions in the wilderness, look at transitions and new battles, take a little detour with Balaam and the donkey, and finally wrap up with a tragedy at Peor. Okay, section 1, the census at Sinai. So the book kicks off with a massive logistical challenge right in the middle of the wilderness. 603,550. This staggering number is the total census count of fighting men, 20 years old and upward from the 12 tribes of Israel. And keep in mind, that specifically excludes the Levites. This single data point is actually what anchors the book's title, Numbers, and it really establishes the sheer scale of this ancient migration. We aren't just talking about a small family road trip here. This is a sprawling, massive nation on the move. Now, before they ever set a single foot on the march, the Israelites were meticulously organized just to manage that enormous scale. Right in the center sat the tabernacle, alongside the Levites who were guarding it. Then, surrounding them on all 4 compass points were specific tribes. You had Judah leading the east, Reuben on the south, Ephraim over on the west, and Dan covering the north. Honestly, it's a masterclass in ancient logistics and maintaining order. But it wasn't just about physical logistics. The camp required spiritual order too. The text outlines these really fascinating cultural rules for personal holiness, like the Nazirite vow. If someone took this special vow to separate themselves to the Lord, they had to follow 3 super strict protocols. They had to completely abstain from wine and grapes, they had to let their hair grow out without ever using a razor, and they had to avoid all contact with dead bodies. And yes, that even meant close relatives. It was a highly visible, incredibly intense commitment to purity within the camp. Which brings us to section 2, the spies and the curse. Eventually, the camp actually reaches the border of Canaan, but the narrative fractures the moment the tribal leaders return from scouting the land with wildly conflicting reports. 10 of the spies report back in sheer panic. They say, the land devours its inhabitants? The people are giants. We seem like grasshoppers to them. But then, in total contrast, Joshua and Caleb confidently declare, the land flows with milk and honey. Their protection is gone. We are well able to overcome it. But as you might guess, fear completely overtakes the camp, and the entire congregation actually rebels and refuses to enter. And that decision, it triggers a brutally precise cause and effect timeline. For every single day the spies scouted the land, which was 40 days, the Israelites are sentenced to 1 year of wandering. Day 40 marks their rebellion, which results in a staggering 40-year penalty. They're forced to turn right back around into the wilderness until that entire faithless generation dies out, leaving only Joshua and Caleb from the original scouting party.
Let's move into section 3, rebellions in the wilderness.
So this next era is really defined by a super intense repetitive rhythm of divine command followed by human rebellion. I mean, think about the tension of leadership during a massive decades-long crisis. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? That was a direct challenge from Korah, a Levite who teamed up with 250 well-known chiefs to literally rise up against Moses and Aaron. It's a classic power struggle, questioning the established hierarchy right in the middle of a brutal desert wandering. The resolution to this conflict is, well, it's terrifyingly absolute. First off, the ground literally splits open, swallowing Korah, Dathan, and Abiram alive. Next, divine fire consumes the 250 rebel leaders who are offering unauthorized incense. And finally, just to completely shut down the leadership dispute once and for all, Aaron's wooden staff miraculously sprouts blossoms and ripe almonds overnight. It was undeniable proof of his unique status as the chosen high priest.
On to section 4, transitions and new battles.
Now, decades have passed, and it brings these bitter transitions as the older generation finally fades away. Desperate for water at Meribah, Moses is commanded by God to simply speak to a rock. But instead, out of pure frustration, he disobeys and strikes the rock twice with his staff. The consequence is staggering. Moses, the great leader who brought them all the way out of Egypt, is permanently barred from entering the Promised Land. It just goes to show that absolutely no one, not even the highest human authority in the camp, is exempt from the consequences of faithlessness. From there, the narrative just accelerates through a rapid-fire sequence of triumphs and tragedies. Aaron dies on Mount Hor, and his son Eleazar steps up to inherit the priesthood. When the people start complaining yet again, this crazy plague of fiery serpents attacks the camp. But Moses is instructed to build a bronze serpent on a pole, which instantly heals anyone who simply looks at it. Through all of this, the Israelites are actually starting to transform from wandering refugees into a conquering military force. They end up utterly defeating King Sihon and King Og, capturing vast Amorite territories in the process.
And that brings us to section 5, Balaam and the donkey.
Here, the text suddenly zooms completely outside the Israelite camp. We meet Balak, a terrified Moabite king who's watching this massive army approach. And Balaam, a non-Israelite prophet he actually hires to curse them. What follows is this moment of highly surreal drama. God tells Balaam to only speak what he commands. But as Balaam is traveling, an invisible angel of the Lord blocks his path. Balaam can't see the angel at all, but you know who can? His donkey. So after Balaam strikes the donkey 3 times for veering off path, God miraculously opens the donkey's mouth, and the donkey delivers this surprisingly logical complaint. What have I done to you, that you have struck me these 3 times? Am I not your donkey, on which you have ridden all your life long to this day? The sheer absurdity of a man arguing with his faithful donkey, it perfectly highlights the prophet's own spiritual blindness.
So King Balak's entire plan completely backfires. Despite being heavily paid to curse Israel, Balaam is compelled by God to bless them instead, not just once, but 3 separate times. He tells the king, "How can I curse whom God has not cursed?" He even goes so far as to predict their future dominance with a really striking prophecy, saying, "A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel." Even their enemies are literally forced to acknowledge their strength and divine protection.
Finally, section 6, the tragedy at Peor.
Israel has survived the wilderness, they've defeated foreign kings, they've even been blessed by an enemy prophet. But as it turns out, internal seduction proves far deadlier than anything on the outside. While encamped in Shittim, right on the very edge of the Promised Land, the text reports that Israelite men are seduced into worshiping the gods of Moab. They yoke themselves to Baal of Peor, engaging in illicit sacrifices and relations with Moabite and Midianite women. This profound internal compromise triggers an immediate, absolutely disastrous divine plague throughout the entire camp.
And this brings us to our final, devastating statistic today. 24,000. That is the death toll of the resulting plague. The destruction only halts when a priest named Phinehas takes zealous, violent intervention against an Israelite man and a Midianite woman who brazenly brought their idolatry right up to the tent of meeting. It is a stark, brutal end to the whole wandering period.
Which leaves us right at the edge of the Jordan River, looking out at the Promised Land. And it leaves us with this provocative thought to ponder. After 40 long years of wandering, incredible survival, and constant rebellion, will this new generation actually learn from the fatal mistakes of their parents? You see, the Book of Numbers meticulously documents the failures of the past, but the choice of the future, well, that lies entirely with those who remain. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I will catch you next time.